going to come straight to you on this one, Bumble. The greatest India cricket captain and why?
Ooh. Sourav Ganguly.
Why?
Because he played for Lancs.
He gave
No
him,
bias, please.
he gave him a toughness. He toughened them up. Didn't take any from anybody. Think about the Andrew Flintoff on the balcony with the shirt.
That was iconic, yeah.
Yeah, and Sourav did exactly the same. I thought he toughened them up when they went to Australia and stood toe-to-toe, whereas they would react to sledging previously and sort of cower away from it. He hit them back. I've got great admiration for him, of the players that he had in that side, because he sort of came into that side with Dravid, and going back to mid-90s, and young Sachin Tendulkar had played, so the nucleus of a team going forward. But predominantly that he gave that team a real tough edge, and he led from the front.
Same question to you.
So Ajit Wadekar was the captain of India when they originally came over to England to play. Fred Truman had bullied them, and a lot of their legends had just gone away with their reputations ruined. And Ajit Wadekar was completely different. He wasn't as good a player as some of those other players, but as a captain, he had complete ice in his veins. When they won the Test match at the Oval, which won them the series, I think, that was the first time they beat England in a series. He was asleep when it happened. He just went off to the back. He was like, okay, we're either going to get it done or we're not going to get it done. I'm going to wake up to good news or bad news and I'll deal with it. And I think he really changed the way that Indian cricket thought about it. But I do think for a long time, they probably didn't have someone who would stand face to face with others. Yeah. And I think Ganguly is... I think Indian society was changing around that point as well. I mean, if you look at the people who come after Ganguly, it's that sort of Virat Kohli style of person, Ashwin, who completely believe in themselves. So I think India was changing already, but I think Ganguly was the face of that. I don't think Ganguly was a brilliant tactical captain or anything, but I think him and Ajit definitely changed the way that India thought about their cricket and moved forward. Dhoni's the best tactical captain India have ever had, but Dhoni's one of the best tactical captains that anyone's ever had. Dhoni is so pragmatic that there are times where I thought, like, if you pricked him, would a calculator come out of him? Like, he's just so... Yeah. And he used to say things like, I don't look at stats and I don't look at video and everything. It's like, yeah, but every time you see cricket, it just goes into your brain and you work it out. And you can watch him, even in Test cricket, I thought he was a really clever tactical captain. So I think he's the best tactically, but the other two are probably more important to the legacy of Indian cricket.
That's what I was thinking, the legacy, that nobody's going to steamroller us now.
Yeah,
we're going to stand up to these guys.
And I remember when Dhoni, there was a series when Dhoni first captained India in Test, and Anil Kumble was still captain. And I think Anil Kumble got injured. And there was like a Test where it was Anil Kumble and a Test where it was Dhoni. You could see the difference. Like, Dhoni wasn't like a Sourav Ganguly, but he was such a proactive person, and he made the 11th best player in the team feel like they were 10 foot tall and everything. But also tactically, there was an energy to the way that he played. And I think if you go back through the history of Indian cricket, they're probably a little bit more static in the way that they had captain. And suddenly they had someone very, very different. Obviously, there was also, great players. They would have had, who was the guy that lost his eye? I can't remember.
Nawab Patodi.
Nawab Patodi. You would have remembered him a lot. I think if he had played more Test matches, he could have had a huge impact. But was it a car accident?
Yes, car accident.
He had a car accident. He still played in Test cricket after having the car accident. But he was I think he was probably the first player that sort of expanded what Indian cricket could be as well.
Good player.
Yeah.
Played at Sussex. Was he overseas? He might have been overseas.
Yeah, I think he was, yeah.
How would you sum up Virat Kohli's time as India captain?
Volatile.
Great to watch.
He was. He was animated, wasn't it? And sometimes that will work with a player. It won't work with all the players, as we've seen. I mean, they changed the captain.
Yeah.
And they've got a more level sort of guy as captain. And so, he was very visual. And his expressions, I thought, on TV and to be descriptive on radio, it is fabulous for us who were commenting on the game. But it won't work with all the team. You've got to handle everything. So Dhoni would be an Iceman, as you mentioned, Wadekar. But, I go back to Ganguly, who I know Sourav a bit from commentary, and it's time at lengths. You ain't steamrollering us anymore. We're going to stand up to you.
Yeah.
And I thought he did it brilliantly.
I think the thing with Kohli is that he's probably very rare in cricket in that he's a rah-rah captain. You know, it's all about the big speeches, the big moments and everything. And cricket isn't like football or rugby or those other sports. And I remember hearing this years ago when the England team was showing like this video on the rugby players about how the rugby players were like, you know, we're going to die on the field for each other. And the cricketers were like, what? We're just going to go out there and play cricket for our country and be professional.
Over the top, that,
yeah. And so I think there are times when Kohli was all in, and there would be a young player be like, I'm going to die for Kohli. And there's that old player in the corner, you know, going, mate, I'm going to have a cigarette out the back in a minute. You know.
Like the hacker.
Yeah.
The hacker. You're all right, lads.
If you did that in cricket, right?
Can you imagine the India players doing a hacker at Lord's?
You know, so,
one of the members.
So I do think it's very different. And you look at, you know, some of the great players, you know, someone like Rahul Dravid, you know, reads books, writes books, you know, a real thinker on the game. How would he have reacted in a change room with Virat Kohli? Mitali Raj, the great, you know, batter for them, who in a World Cup game is about to go out and bat, and she's reading a book on poetry, right? It doesn't work as well in cricket, but it doesn't mean that Kohli didn't get the most out of a lot of players. But I also think with Kohli, he probably reminds me of that sort of Michael Jordan type of leader where he doesn't always understand that other people have actually had to struggle to get there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, you know.
This is not as easy.
Why are you not hitting this inside out over cover for 6?
Yeah.
Like,
why are you not
the other bloke's trying to handle Mitchell Johnson, right? You know what I mean?
Gets a thick inside edge onto him.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I don't think he was a bad captain. I think there is a general thought in India, because there's a whole, forget the Rohit and the Virat fans who are like, you know, Ronaldo and Messi fans. If you take those away, I think there's a bit of a thought that Kohli wasn't a good captain. I don't think that's true at all.
Is that harsh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't think that's right. But I don't.
Why would they think that though? I have interest, you think?
I think partly he wasn't you know, if you come on the back of Dhoni and you're a normal captain,
that's it. You come
you know
on the
what I
back
mean?
of him.
Yeah.
Even he's the greatest player in the world. Yeah. You know, there's going to be similarities, and they're totally different.
Exactly.
You know?
And you know, Kohli's a brilliant player and a better player than Dhoni. He doesn't read the game like Dhoni does, and that's why captaincy is a different job, right?
Yeah.
And what about right now with India moving forward?
What
Both,
format?
I guess. Obviously, Rohit's the Test captain. You said white ball stuff still a little bit undecided.
Yeah, so I think Rohit's going to do to the Champions Trophy. So they've got 2 jobs, you know, sorted for a little while. Shubman Gill's the vice captain of everything. I think India's the last team on earth that cares that vice captains still exist.
Yeah.
Everyone else is who's the vice captain of this team at the moment?
England didn't have one, did they? The first year of the
Travis Head was vice captain and been dropped for a year.
Yeah.
And no one even noticed that he was still vice captain. So I think they're thinking that Shubman Gill is the leader. Everyone thought that Hardik Pandya would get the job, and they've given it to Sky. So I think what they're doing now is probably a good move. They're just having a look at a few different players out there. There's no rush, right? There's not a World Cup coming up in the next, for the first time ever, there's not a World Cup coming up in the next year and a half. They can take their time and have a look at it when it comes to those things. I think Sky's a really interesting thinker on cricket, though. I'd be interested to see how he does.
There's no World Cup.
Hey?
There's no World Cup.
For the next 8 minutes.
2025, there is no World Cup. What on earth are we going to do?
I know.
What am I going to do?
I think we might shut cricket down for the year.
But I think there's 12 from 2026 onwards. 12.
No, there's 12 in 2026.
Yes, there we go.
I'm done.
You are done, aren't you?
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.